Okay, so we're talking about magnetic energy and power. Disclaimer, qualifier, warning. This is very unconventional information. I'm going to be using terms incorrectly from a conventional point of view, and these concepts are going to be totally way out there, completely blasphemous from a conventional science point of view. If you're looking for conventional information, please go somewhere else. If you're looking for something that might be of interest in the future and might actually be backed up by some devices and everything in the future, assuming that we are allowed to show them publicly again, then this is for you. And then hopefully you can learn something from this and get something out of these videos. So, power. Let's just talk about some of the magnetic units that are out there and that have been out there for a long time, like magnetic motors, and some of the claims behind those magnetic motors, and the difference between that and then the technology that we present. If you see the typical magnet motor, which might have an array or configuration of magnets that are often positioned with repel, like north to north or south to south, and maybe they have a very creative configuration in those rotors and they're trying to essentially produce electricity. That is not what I'm talking about when I refer to the magnetic energy in our units. Those type of repel motors or those magnet motors that are simply trying to use the energy or the fields around magnets to create rotation to then produce electricity, that is, in our opinion, based on a number of those types of units and other units that we think are far superior, that type of reasoning, that type of thinking is a misuse of the magnetic field as we see it. It is really short-changing the power, the work, the energy, the magnificence available from using magnetic energy. It is a super limitation. Let me just keep going. How many bad things can I say about those units? I don't want to be mean about them. So there are some cool things about those units, and there may be great transition technology. But what we are talking about is far more than that. And this is more like a Tesla type of technology where we are using the fields around magnets as a catalyst to perform other functions. And so when you look at our units and you see like variations of dielectrics, or you see paramagnetic or diamagnetic materials, we're harnessing, or hollow core coils, we're harnessing etheric energy. We are creating a pulse rhythm that balances a north or south field of a magnet. And I'm only using those terms because that's conventional. We see that as an inflow and an outflow of energy. And we are letting those fields be a catalyst to a much greater process. So if you take, for example, like a paramagnetic material and you have the proper pulsing and the proper magnetic fields and coil exposing to that element, that can take on and release magnetic fields that are insanely powerful, and it can release those instantly. So repel, we would say that's a total misuse. That's a shortchanging of magnetic fields. North to south is generally the configuration that we'll go with, but the principle behind those units we would say is more of an attract release. Attraction power that you can create in paramagnetic and even like in diamagnetic materials by subjecting them to certain magnetic fields. That's where you get true power, in the sense like our Magnegen unit that has like 480 horsepower. That, and those were running in vehicles, by the way. So we're talking about real power here. And now the part of the difference is This is also getting into the realm of a nuclear reaction, and it's also getting in the realm of a gravity reaction. And that's why various engineers and scientists over the decades have said that this type of technology, the magnetic technology that we're talking about, they would say that's a gravity motor, or that's a gravity engine, or that's an etheric engine or an etheric motor, or that's a nuclear device. The radiation produced by those units is always temporary. Once the unit is turned off, that radiation disperses in a matter of minutes. But it's a safe radiation. There is no harm that can come from that type of radiation in the configuration that it's established in the units that we've presented. So think about the magnetic field. It's a catalyst. It's an interdimensional process. It's the access. It's our free access to etheric energy, and how we harness that, and how we draw from that, and how we attract from that. That's where the true power is. It's not about trying to position magnets on repel, and hoping you can get something out of that. That's a ridiculous process compared to drawing in etheric energy on attract, creating super strong fields that are attract release fields that can give you tremendous torque. And so just think even in terms of the paradigm shift that's occurring, and that hopefully will occur even in free energy technology and in free energy units. This is so far beyond a simple magnet motor, and that is a fundamentally flawed principle in so many ways. And not to mention that, but the output of it is very questionable, to say the least, compared to the idea of attracting in an abundant amount, an infinite amount of neutral magnetic energy, and then harnessing that energy. Not to mention, when you have a gravity motor or a nuclear motor or a nuclear engine, that opens the door to so much more than just trying to generate some electricity. That whole arena of let's use a magnet motor to generate electricity, again, it barely puts us further than where we are right now. It's a fundamentally flawed principle. It's a fundamentally flawed line of reasoning to think that you're going to take something as powerful as an etheric engine or a gravity engine and simply use it to generate more electricity, when you can actually use it to generate things like magnetic current and magnetic fields and etheric fields and force fields and transformational fields and transmutation fields, fields that will actually take matter and disassemble it completely. And we'll do another video on that. Fields that will actually assemble matter and bring an end to scarcity, and we'll do something on that as well. Fields that will actually alleviate gravity or counteract gravity, or you can make gravity more intense or completely nullify it altogether. That's the type of space age alien technology. That's the type of progression that we're talking about, that we want the world to be open to. And I want to make the comparison real quick, because I always like to draw the metaphysical relationship to this technology, because this is the synthesis of spirituality and science. Magnetic energy is where spirituality meets science. It's where the force meets hard science. And so when you think about power versus force. No, wait, I just used force in a word. That was the metaphysical form of force from Star Wars. But when you think about power versus force, and let's just stay in that for a second, the magnetic energy units produce true power through a flow of energy, through attraction of that energy. Electrical technology is all about trying hard to overcome nature, to force something to happen, to force work to happen. That mentality, and I say that with great intention, that mentality needs to come to a grinding halt, because that's destroying our planet. It's destroying us. It's destroying us literally from the inside out, with electrical fields and the electrical smog and the electromagnetic radiation smog that we are all living in. We are trying so hard to force our will upon nature, to change nature, to bend to our will. And that bullshit has to stop. Okay, that idea of force and that we can overcome this and we can force this to happen and we can expend our natural resources and force this to happen and bring that to the whole planet. My God, let's bring electricity to the whole planet and force even more of our will upon everyone. That is total bullshit that seriously needs to come to an end. Magnetic technology is true power in the sense that it receives and attracts power without the need to force anything. In fact, as you try to force it down a wire, that process completely fails. So electricity, generally speaking, it'll go down a conductor like a copper wire. Magnetic current, as we're defining it, is more of an ionic stream that will go down a steel wire. Electricity, as it's done today, is a forced process. It forces an etheric reaction in that conductor. Magnetic current is attracted through its conductor. Now it can also go through air, it can go through space, it can go through anything because it can become hyperdimensional. So it can link and then go at any distance at a nearly infinite velocity. But let's just talk about the conductor for a second. And let's compare them just real quick, and we're going to do a more in-depth video on that as well. So electricity loses strength over its conduction because it's a forced process. It's not in alignment with nature. It's not in alignment with true natural laws and etheric principles and etheric extraction. Magnetic current, on the other hand, attracts to its destination, doesn't lose any intensity, doesn't lose any force, and actually gains energy as it goes through its conductor because it's completely in alignment with etheric extraction and etheric principles. It works on an attract principle. So it's true power. Now, align that with metaphysics. Power versus force. There's been a lot of work on that. There's been a lot of exploration on that. The true power in meditation or in metaphysics is staying open and receiving that power, having an intention with that, staying neutral, abiding by a greater metaphysical process, by a greater process of receiving energy into yourself, into the world, and then putting your intentions on that or putting your prayers on that and utilizing that true power of prayer in a receptive mode, knowing that the energy is already around you, versus trying to force something to happen. Even as a metaphysical aspect, when people try to force something, there's usually a lot of tension involved in that. There's a lot of exertion involved in that. There's very limited lines of thinking in that. And think of all that constriction. It's constriction. Force implies that you're constricting muscles, that you're constricting micro muscles in your head, in your thoughts, and everything. Like the thoughts are limited, the physiological aspects limited, even the energetic body, our energetic bodies become constricted. Whereas true power and the receptivity to that and the staying open to that, it relaxes muscles, it relaxes your mental framework, it expands your energy body. You receive so much more power, and then that power becomes available to do whatever you want with. And yeah, that is definitely preachy, and I apologize if that offended anyone. But let's bring it back to the technology. It's so important that we move into a paradigm of power and not force. It's so important that we let go of trying to make nature do what we want it to do. And it's time for us to move into a process of working with nature and being open with nature and harnessing true natural laws. And with that, I will let you go and we'll see you again. Thank you.